Hello, I'm Laura, the library lady, and welcome to this episode. I've been reading the paper, as you know I like to do, and before we were shut down because of the virus, there's an article from the March 18th section of the Maryland Gazette, my local newspaper, and it reads, "One woman show brings women's rights advocate to life." Here's the paper. A one-woman show means one person puts on a show. I've done that before. Let's see what this one-woman show is about. This article was published on March 18th, and it's by Linda Rhodes. A dramatic one-woman show on the life of Elizabeth Cady Stanton, a prominent advocate for women's rights during the late 19th century, was the highlight of the Retired Officer Wives Club, also known as ROWC, luncheon meeting. The 90-minute event was held March 3rd at Club Meade. If you don't know, that was probably on the Fort Meade military base in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. Okay. Mary Ann Jug, an actress who has performed her historical shows for the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., portrayed Stanton in a performance that featured several ROWC members and guests from the audience. The hour-long performance was part of the ROWC's annual Women's History Month observation and the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote in 1920. Boys and girls, there's been so many things going on that you may not have even remembered that March, the month we're celebrating right now, is Women's History Month. And what's so exciting about this March is, as the paper stated, it is the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote. And I'm wearing my nice warm shirt here. It's a little breezy here because anytime anyone fights for a right, it takes a lot of courage. And this represents our fighting men and women, or should I say our men and women in the military, who we salute for all of their support and their families. Well, a lot of people don't know about Miss Elizabeth Stanton, but she was a huge advocate for women's rights. But the person we know most about is a woman named Susan B. Anthony. And I have several books here that talk about women's suffrage. Oh, that's right. That's what was called back in the early 1900s, suffrage, because they were suffering and fighting for their right to vote. This one is called "Why Couldn't Susan B. Anthony Vote?" and Other Questions About Women's Suffrage. So if women are part of our nation, to take full advantage of citizenship, it was very, very important for them to vote. And here we see a picture of Miss Susan B. Anthony, and this is an illustration. This is one of many books that you can learn about, and this is by Mary K. Carson. I have another book here that I read that I really liked. It's called Susan B. Anthony, and it's by Alexandria Wallner. And once again, it has wonderful pictures, and I read this story, and it's absolutely a lovely book. Then I also have Marching with Aunt Susan, another Votes for Women. And this is a wonderful story of a little girl who can't figure out why she's treated differently than her brothers. And it even talks about how her father wouldn't let her go certain places and do certain things that her brother did. But you can see here, while her father was out fishing with the boys, her mother had a suffrage movement, and she met Susan B. Anthony for the very first time. And this is a lovely book as well. But one of my favorite books, and I'm going to read a little bit of this one, is called Heart on Fire, Susan B. Anthony, votes for president. And we have our author and our illustrated listed here. Now, when we think of the women's suffrage movement, we often think of Susan B. Anthony. But boys and girls, Ms. Stanton, that the article was about, and many other women, including a former enslaved person named Sojourner Truth, who wrote who spoke a wonderful speech called "Ain't I a Woman?" We're all in this together, even abolitionist Frederick Douglass. So we'll learn more about those individuals on another episode. But today I'm going to read a little bit from this book. It is just wonderful, has beautiful illustrations, and it's a beautiful story. So let's look. Okay. So turn to the first page. You know I like to look at the title page. Look at that title page. That's where the author is listed and, of course, the illustrator. Okay. Now, they actually start off with this book with the 14th Amendment, which happened after the end of slavery, where it said all people were supposed to vote. But for some reason, even though former enslaved people who were men were allowed to vote, something happened during Reconstruction. That's another time in history we'll have to talk about. But then the 19th Amendment had to be passed. So let's read and see what we have here. Here we have Miss Susan B. Anthony. Rochester, New York, November 1st, 1872. 4 days to the presidential election. Register now, the morning paper said. Susan B. Anthony jumped up to grab her purse and wrap. So there she is. She's going to get her purse. Out the door and down the street she flew. Her sister Hannah and friend Mary hoisted their skirts to keep up. Women couldn't be equal to men if they did not vote. Miss Anthony's heels tapped faster and faster. And you see how differently they dressed back in the early 1900s than we do now? That's right. That was a long time ago. 100 years. Wow, let's see what we have here. At the voter registration office, she marched in like a gust of wind. This was the moment Miss Anthony had dreamed of for so long. She demanded to register to vote. The inspectors looked up shocked and confused. Only men could sign up to vote, not women who owned property, paid taxes, held a job, or raised children. No woman was allowed to cast a ballot. Outrageous! Unbelievable! True. So you see Miss Anthony here, she is not happy and she wants to vote. She wants to be a full citizen. Miss Anthony believed women did have the right to vote because of a new law, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. All persons born in the United States have the same rights as citizens, she told the men. Wasn't she a person and a citizen? The inspectors scratched their heads. They argued, yes, Miss Anthony's right. Debated, no, women can't vote, and disagreed. Finally, one man said, sign here. It was done. Miss Anthony had registered to vote. Now, the 14th Amendment that she's referring to was supposed to also allow former enslaved men and women to vote, specifically men. And that's another topic for another day. But please know that she was using that for her advantage, which was fine because she's a citizen of the United States. Election Day, November 5th, 1872. Now this is 1872, and they didn't win the right to vote until 1920. That's a long time. Up at dawn, Miss Anthony raced to the polls at 7 a.m. sharp. Lighting the match, Miss Anthony cast her vote. Throwing more tinder, 15 other women voted too. So she voted and 15 other women voted in 1872. That night before she slept, she wrote her good friend Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Well, I have been and gone and done it. Miss Anthony had voted for president. Trouble was simmering. So I'm going to just stop right there because remember, a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in the middle of this story, Miss Anthony has cast her vote. And so you'll have to look with your parents and find out what happened next. What I can tell you is that we did, as women and African Americans and others, did gain the right to vote. But you need to understand the story of how that happened and how important voting is. This year, 2020, we're having a presidential election. And if you're not old enough to vote yet, that's okay. You need to learn about how important voting is. So when it's your time to vote, when you're 18, you will be able to vote. And be very careful that when you vote, other people have the right to vote too. All right, that's today's lesson. Talk to your parents about who is running for president. And if you're a state who has not had your primary election yet, you can talk about that too. Because it's important that everyone who can vote should vote. It is an American right. Thank you, boys and girls. I'll see you next time.